The first event of every sprint is sprint planning. At this stage, the Scrum team selects the highest priority product backlog items based on their business value and the team's capacity. The team defines the sprint goal and plans how to meet the goal by the end of the sprint. Sprint planning is a time-boxed event that takes place with the participation of the product owner, Scrum Master, and developers. If needed, the Scrum team may also invite appropriate key stakeholders to this event. For teams using other Agile frameworks, the sprint planning event may be referred to as iteration planning. As the product owner is responsible for prioritizing the work to maximize value, the product owner proposes the top priority PBIs for discussion. To define the sprint goal, the team collaborates on how the sprint can create the most value for stakeholders. Note that to be pulled into the sprint planning meeting, a product backlog item should meet the definition of ready. In discussion with the product owner, the developers determine how many of the top priority PBIs can be realistically completed during the sprint by considering the definition of done. This decision depends on the effort required to complete the proposed PBIs and the team's capacity based on the length of the time box. One reason that the length of each sprint is fixed throughout the project is so the developers can better estimate how much work they can complete in a sprint. Only the developers decide how many PBIs can be completed during the sprint. Neither the product owner nor Scrum Master can dictate the amount of work that should be completed. When planning the sprint in detail, developers break down the selected PBIs into tasks, typically of a duration of 8 hours or less for easier planning. The team estimates the duration of each task with their past performance. If the developers determine that they have chosen too much or too little work for the sprint, they can adjust the PBIs to be completed accordingly. When planning the sprint, developers also consider other activities they need to engage in during the sprint and account for holidays and time off, as they will impact the team's capacity. By the end of the sprint planning meeting, the Scrum team has created the sprint backlog, which consists of top priority PBIs selected to be completed in the sprint goal, and the sprint plan. Sprint planning is a time-boxed event. Its duration varies with the length of the sprint, but one typical time box length is a maximum of 8 hours for a 1-month sprint. The Scrum Master is responsible for facilitating the sprint planning meeting and keeping it within the time box. With the conclusion of sprint planning, sprint execution begins. Lastly, let's take a look at the ultimate tips for exam success. The sprint backlog is made up of the top priority PBIs selected to be completed in the sprint goal, and the sprint plan. Only the developers can decide how many PBIs can be completed during the sprint. This decision is based on the effort required to complete the proposed PBIs and the team's capacity based on the length of the time box. The sprint backlog is made up of the top priority PBIs selected to be completed in the sprint goal, and the sprint plan.